with a question. What do you think of when you hear the word politics? I mean, what's your first thought or image? The American actor and comedian Robin Williams once put it as politics. Poly, a Latin word meaning many, and ticks, meaning blood-sucking creatures. But all jokes aside, what really comes to mind? Maybe you think of a public modern figure, such as Trump, Biden, or Governor Inslee. Maybe you think of a historical moment that has shaped today's world. Or maybe your thought is less of an image and more of a feeling. Disgust, competitiveness, annoyance, or even fear. Now, let's take a moment to be honest. The Republican Party has been hit pretty hard by the left, making some frustrated, but making so many more want to hide from the persecution. The feeling of fear and helplessness is real, and people are beginning to believe that they can simply shelter themselves from the storm. Several of my acquaintances and friends say they'd rather not know what's going on because there's nothing they can do about it. The saying, ignorance is bliss, is true for so many. But does it last? No. In our world, nation, and county, countless have perhaps unknowingly clung to this old saying. They won't concern themselves with the bother of what's truly going on in our world, I believe, for two main reasons. One, it doesn't affect them in the now. And two, they believe that there's nothing that can be done. It's devastating to think that the patriots of our nation are dying, which is causing us to lose the vision that our home once held. We could lose the hope that was once given to all people, and I have even seen some lose the will to care. Soon, we will completely lose the desire to be free, unless something changes. Unless the patriots that once led our country stand up again and shake the rest, waking them up. Our world is rapidly changing, and despite what many wish, we must adapt. For our country, for our people, for our home. No one has to be alone in this. We must set aside our differences and stand up together as our rights and freedoms hang in the balance. Today, I believe three main things will affect our fight. This is the past, the present, and the thought of the future. Cool. The past is where you learn the lesson. The future is where you apply the lesson. This quote from Michael Burns summarizes my first point, the past. Some people believe that the past has no play in the present. The past is just something distant, faded, and unwanted. But most of us here know that that is not the case. The past has created the present, and will continue to create the future. But unless we learn from the past, the same mistakes will be made over and over again. Many of you who are here and who are listening on the live stream have been a part of the Republican Party for a long time. You've seen the changes, both good and bad inside of politics, and have much experience on the field. In the year of 2021, we need you now more than ever. We need you to guide us with what you know and what you have already experienced. Things are changing again, and we need you to show us how we can adapt the knowledge you have and use it towards our advantage. We don't want the terrible things that have happened in the past to repeat again. What did you do to rebuild after the Watts riots? How can those lessons help us to rebuild after what happened with Chaz in Seattle? What did you do when communists tried to take over Hollywood? Is there any wisdom in that we can use against the Chinese Communist Party from taking over the internet and everything else? We need you to show us how we can avoid these events, or at least how to recover from them. You still have a part to play, so play it. Don't leave it all to the next generations. You are still needed. Now, I have asked our senior statesmen and stateswomen for their help, but what about the rest of us? What about the next generations? For those of us too young to vote, We must simply be ready, learning, observing, understanding all we can before our parents pass the torch. One day, we will decide what kind of country we live in and what is needed to help it thrive. Because of this, we must be ready. For those old enough to vote and run for office, I believe you have two missions: to accept and to act. Accept the knowledge and experience that has been gained by those before you. Don't push it away with overconfidence, or pride comes before a fall. The past and the present might look extremely different, but as I've said earlier, the past often repeats itself. Once you've accepted the knowledge given, act. Use that insight as power. Of course, you may not use all their advice. Some of it might not work in today's world, but don't cast it aside. Accept it, then act. Avoid mistakes by using knowledge from both the past and the present. Only together, with past and present, will our future of liberty be bright. If we continue to step aside, refuse to adapt, or don't stand up, our nation will crumble forever. This is our time, perhaps the first in a series of last chances we have to save our county and our country. Many times in our history, our freedoms and rights have been endangered, and the American people have stood up. It is time to do it again. It is time to show America that the patriots still hold the torch of liberty. Now, a word from our past president, Ronald Reagan. I will leave you to decide whether what he said in 1989 still rings true today. Thank you.
Finally, there is a great tradition of warnings in presidential farewells. But oddly enough, it starts with one of the things I'm proudest of in the past 8 years. The resurgence of national pride that I called the new patriotism. This national feeling is good, but it won't count for much, and it won't last unless it's grounded in thoughtfulness and knowledge. An informed patriotism is what we want. And are we doing a good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents in the long history of the world? Those of us who are over 35 or so years of age grew up in a different America. We were taught very directly what it means to be an American. And we absorbed almost in the air a love of country and an appreciation of its institutions. If you didn't get these things from your family, you got them from the neighborhood, from the father down the street who fought in Korea, or you could get a sense of patriotism from school. And if all else failed, you could get a sense of patriotism from the popular culture. The movies celebrated democratic values and implicitly reinforced the idea that America was special. TV was like that too, through the mid-60s. But now we're about to enter the 90s, and some things have changed. Younger parents aren't sure that an unambivalent appreciation of America is the right thing to teach modern children. And as for those who create the popular culture, well-grounded patriotism is no longer the style. We've got to do a better job of getting across that America is freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise, and freedom is special and rare. It's fragile. It needs production. So we've got to teach history based not on what's in fashion, but what's important. Why the Pilgrims came here, who Jimmy Doolittle was, and what those 30 seconds over Tokyo meant. You know, 4 years ago, on the 40th anniversary of D-Day, I read a letter from a young woman writing to her late father, who had fought on Omaha Beach. Her name was Lisa Zanata Hen, and she said, "We will always remember. We will never forget what the boys of Normandy did." Well, let's help her keep her word. If we forget what we did, we won't know who we are. I'm warning of an eradication of the American memory that could result ultimately in an erosion of the American spirit. And let me offer lesson number one about America. All great change in America begins at the dinner table. So tomorrow night in the kitchen, I hope the talking begins. And children, if your parents haven't been teaching you what it means to be an American, let them know and nail them on it. That would be a very American thing to do. The past few days, when I've been at that window upstairs, I've thought a bit of the shining city upon a hill. The phrase comes from John Winthrop, who wrote it to describe the America he imagined. What he imagined was important because he was an early pilgrim, an early freedom man. He journeyed here on what today we'd call a little wooden boat. And like the other pilgrims, he was looking for a home that would be free. I've spoken of the shining city all my political life. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here. That's how I saw it and see it still. After 200 years, 2 centuries, she still stands strong and true on the granite ridge, and her glow is held steady no matter what storm. And she's still a beacon, still a magnet for all who must have freedom, for all the pilgrims from all the lost places who are hurtling through the darkness toward home. So, goodbye, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.